Hey there, UFC bettor. It's Captain Castiron, the world's leading UFC fight prediction expert. Back once again to help you make money betting on the UFC. Now let's review my top 5 picks for UFC 254, Khabib vs. Gaethje. This event was held on Saturday, October 24th, 2020 in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. UFC 254 featured a total of 12 fights, headlined by a spectacular main event featuring the undefeated lightweight champion Khabib the Eagle Nurmagomedov as he defended his belt against knockout artist challenger Justin the Highlight Gaethje. I profited 31.76 units on an investment of 82. Pick number 1 of my top 5 featured a fight between Unjung and Sam Alvey in the light heavyweight division. The line on the favorite Unjung was minus 358, with the comeback on the underdog Sam Alvey at plus 266. I risked 18 units on the favorite Unjung to win 5.06. Unjung is a 27-year-old Orthodox fighter from South Korea with 2 UFC fights under his belt. Standing 6'4" with a 78-inch reach, this 26-year-old is coming off a knockout of Mike Rodriguez in just over a minute. The fighter from Korean top team is 13-2 overall and packs a wallop, with 77% of his wins by knockout. Sam Alvey is a 34-year-old southpaw from Manitowoc, Wisconsin, who has competed in the octagon an impressive 19 times. Standing 6'2" tall with a 75-inch reach, Smilin' Sam has 19 of his 33 wins by way of knockout and a total of 48 fights overall. Training out of Team Quest, Alvey has stout takedown defense to complement his powerful left hand. Sam Alvey has lost 4 fights in a row, including 2 by knockout after only being knocked out 1 time in his first 44 professional fights. I thought this fight would show that Father Time had finally caught up to Alvey, and his once iron jaw had turned to glass. No longer could he rely on the threat of his counter left hand to keep opponents at bay and keep his chin protected. I expected Unjung to utilize his high fight IQ to devise the correct game plan to beat Sam Alvey and increase his 92% finishing rate. He would start off being patient and ramp up the pressure as Alvey started to eat shots, eventually throwing pure power late to get the KO. Alvey had other plans as he fought very smartly, responding to Jung's offense with effective offense of his own. He impressively moved away from the cage when he felt his back up against it, something he had often neglected to do in his past fights. There is a solid argument that Sam Alvey won this fight, so I was quite happy to see the judges declare the fight a split draw. I returned the 18 units at risk back to the treasury, letting out a giant sigh of relief. The second of my top 5 picks was in the flyweight division, where Lauren Murphy took on Lilia Shakharova. Lauren Murphy was the favorite at minus 224, and Lilia Shakharova was the underdog at plus 175. I picked the favorite Lauren Murphy to win this contest, risking 18 units to win 8.03. Lauren Murphy is an Orthodox fighter out of Houston, Texas, USA. At 37 years old, with 9 fights in the UFC, she stands 5'5" tall with a 67-inch reach. Lucky has a UFC record of 5 up and 4 down, with an overall record of 13-4, including an impressive 8 wins by KO. Murphy has won 3 octagon encounters in a row over quality competition, and she really seems to be coming into her own. Lilia Shakharova is making her UFC debut at age 29, fighting out of Uzbekistan. Taking this fight on 9 days' notice, Shakharova is 5'4" tall and has a 65-inch reach and boasts an 8-1 record. She is a good boxer with good lateral movement, sharp counters, and good takedown defense. With short notice and no UFC experience being 2 of the most important factors in predicting the outcome of a UFC fight, This pick was an easy one for me. Murphy's powerful build, excellent wrestling, and edges in size and UFC experience would be used to wear down Shakharova and get the TKO. Shakharova actually did quite well, but eventually slowed down, and Murphy was able to get her first career submission by rear naked choke in round 2. Lauren Murphy kept my 18 units safe and earned me 8.03 more. Pick number 3 of my top 5 was a title contender scrap in the middleweight division, pitting Jared Cannonier against Robert Whittaker. Jared Cannonier was favored by the bookies to the tune of -125, with Robert Whittaker coming in at +100. I picked the dog Robert Whittaker to double my money, risking 18 units to win 18 more. Jared Cannonier is an Alaskan switch stance fighter with 10 fights in the UFC. He stands 5 foot 11 inches tall and has a 77-inch reach, sporting a 6-4 record in the UFC and a 13-4 record overall. The 36-year-old has 9 wins by KO, with the last 3 being in a row over notable UFC competition, earning him this high-profile matchup. As the co-main event to Khabib vs. Gaethje, a win here could give the Killer Gorilla a shot at 185-pound gold. Robert Whittaker is a 30-year-old orthodox fighter out of Australia with 15 UFC fights under his belt. The Reaper is quite familiar with belts, being the former UFC middleweight champion and a winner of 11 of his last 12 in the 8-sided cage. Whittaker is 6 foot tall, has a 75-inch reach, and boasts a 21-5 career record. Whittaker had only recently lost his belt after returning from a 16-month layoff, resulting from a horrible series of health crises. He did not look himself when losing the belt, but did return to his expected form in his last fight, leading me to believe that he would fight like the old Whittaker and win this contest decisively. Robert Whittaker won a unanimous decision and added 18 units to my ledger. At position number 4 of my top 5, a prediction on the outcome of a fight in the heavyweight division between Stefan Struve and Tuivasa. This matchup had Stefan Struve favored at -135, with +105 for Tuivasa in the underdog role. I picked the underdog Tuivasa to emerge victorious, putting up 18 units in hopes of earning 18.90 in return. Stefan Struve is a 33-year-old right-handed submission fighter from the Netherlands with 23 fights in the UFC. He is a giant man at 6 foot 11 inches tall with a wingspan of 84 inches, but unfortunately has never learned to consistently fight long. Making his debut in the UFC at age 21 with high hopes, the talented skyscraper lost that fight by knockout. He rebounded with 3 victories in a row after his initial contest, but 11 years later finds himself with a disappointing 13-10 UFC record. His 6 victories by submission in the octagon are quite impressive for a heavyweight, but overshadowed by a disturbing 8 losses by knockout. Tuivasa hails from New South Wales, Australia, and fights from a right-handed stance. Bam Bam is a powerfully built 27-year-old, standing 6 foot 2 inches tall with a 75-inch reach. Tuivasa has lost the last 3 of his 6 octagon appearances leading up to this fight, and may well get his walking papers if he loses again. With all 8 of his victories by knockout, I expect a highly motivated Tuivasa to finish Struve with punches and keep his UFC career afloat. The dogs were barking as Tuivasa took care of business and won 18.90 units for me. The last but not least of my top 5 picks saw 155-pound kingpin Khabib Nurmagomedov defending his belt against challenger Justin Gaethje. The line on the favorite Khabib Nurmagomedov was -360. And the comeback on the underdog Justin Gaethje at +267. Justin Gaethje, the underdog, was my pick to win this contest, and I risked 18 units in hopes of winning 48.06. Khabib Nurmagomedov is a 32-year-old Orthodox fighter fighting out of San Jose, California by way of Makhachkala, Dagestan. The Eagle is undefeated in 12 UFC fights, undefeated in 28 career fights, and is one of the best fighters in UFC history. At 5 foot 10 inches tall with a 70-inch reach, Nurmagomedov has 8 wins by knockout and 10 by submission. His wrestling is overpowering, and most of his opponents have been unable to even compete with him in the octagon. Justin Gaethje is also 32 years old, fighting out of Greeley, Colorado from an orthodox stance. With 7 fights in the UFC, the highlight may well be the single most entertaining fighter we have ever seen enter the octagon. He stands 5 foot 11 inches tall and sports a 70-inch reach, which he has used to KO opponents 19 times in his 22 victories. The former World Series of Fighting champion is an All-American wrestler, but never chooses to grapple in his fights, instead preferring his violence standing up. I think Gaethje has a skill set to win this fight, with solid defensive wrestling and the knockout power to force caution from any opponent. I am counting on him to do what has only very rarely been done, to stuff the takedowns of the champion Khabib. This will enable Gaethje to land strikes, hurt, and then knock out Nurmagomedov in the championship rounds. As it turned out, the Eagle flipped the script on me, brazenly walking down and pressuring Gaethje on the feet until he was exhausted. Nurmagomedov then got the takedown easily whenever he wanted and eventually locked in a beautiful triangle choke for his 29th victory. The Eagle has landed and made off with my 18 units. Overall, I went 3-1-1 on the evening with a solid profit of 31.76 units. In addition to my top 5 picks at 18 units apiece we just went over, I picked every other fight on the card as I always do. Please check out my website, captaincastironfightpicks.com, for my fully documented picks going all the way back to November of 2014. Or check me out at captaincastiron on Twitter. Please like or subscribe if you appreciate what I am doing. Other ways you can support me include purchasing my picks, giving a donation, or signing up on my Patreon. All support is greatly appreciated.